Imagine sitting in a damp, poorly ventilated room in the year 1564. The cold rain is lashing against the leaded window pane, and the wind is howling through the floorboards. You're trying to draft a legal deed, a shipping manifest, or a military map. You dip your goose quill into an inkwell filled with iron gall ink. It smells intensely of rotting oak apples, rust, and sour wine. One slight slip of your hand, a single stray drop of falling from a nib, and hours of painstaking, meticulous labor are instantly ruined. If you make a common mistake, you cannot simply undo it. You have to take a razor-sharp iron knife and literally scrape the top layer of skin off the delicate calfskin parchment, hoping you don't slice clean through the page. Before this ordinary object existed, recording your thoughts was a high-stakes, permanent gamble. A single error could cost you a fortune, brand you a fraud, or get you executed for treason. I'm Samuel of Radiant Reason, and this is a surprising, chaotic story of the pencil. For millennia, humanity existed in a world without mistakes, or rather, a world where mistakes were permanent and deeply punishing. The ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans didn't have a way to quickly jot down a fleeting thought or sketch a rough concept. Instead, they relied on styluses made of solid lead, pewter, or silver. To use them, you had to press with immense force into wooden boards coated in a thin layer of dark wax, leaving a faint gray scratch. It was exhausting, cramped work that made your wrists throb and your fingers stiffen after less than an hour. If you wanted something truly permanent, you had to use ink. But ink was messy, volatile, and highly inconvenient to transport. Think about that for a second. For thousands of years, the simple act of drawing a straight line required a mini chemistry lab, a sharpening knife, a steady hand, and absolute perfection. Scholars spent more time preparing their tools than actually writing down their ideas. Then, nature forced our hand. In the mid-16th century, a violent, catastrophic storm tore to the Borrowdale Valley in Cumbria, England. The winds were so fierce they uprooted massive, ancient oak trees that stood for centuries. When the local shepherd went out to inspect the hillside damage, they found a strange, pitch-black, metallic sludge clinging to the exposed roots. At first, they thought it was coal, but it wouldn't burn. It just sat in the fire, glowing red before cooling back down. However, they noticed it left a dark, velvety, indelible mark on everything it touched. The shepherds began using chunks of this raw substance to mark their sheep. Without realizing it, they had stumbled upon the only pure, solid deposit of high-grade graphite ever discovered on Earth. It didn't take long for the British Crown to realize that these black rocks were worth more than gold. The material wasn't just good for marking sheep. It was perfect for lining the molds used to cast iron cannonballs. It made the interiors perfectly smooth, allowing cannons to shoot further and straighter. Suddenly, this valley became a matter of national security. The mines were put under strict military guard. Stealing a single lump of Borrowdale graphite was a felony punishable by public whipping, hard labor in the colonies, or the gallows. The British held a brutal monopoly on writing. They cut up the graphite into thin, square strips, wrapped them in string or twigs, and sold them across Europe at exorbitant prices. But across the English Channel, France was at war with Great Britain. By the 1790s, the British Navy had blockaded French ports, cutting them off entirely from this miracle material. French artists couldn't draw, and more importantly, French generals couldn't draft tactical maps. Enter our forgotten hero, Nicolas Jacques Conti. He wasn't a wealthy aristocrat or a seasoned industrialist. He was a one-eyed soldier, mechanical inventor, and hot air balloonist serving under Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon directly ordered Conti to find an alternative to the smuggled British graphite. The survival of the Revolutionary Army depended on it. Conti locked himself in a smoky workshop, facing a brutal chemical problem. The low-grade graphite found in France and Germany was full of sand and rock impurities. If you tried to write with it, it would scratch the paper or crumble into useless dust under the slightest pressure. Conti had a brilliant flash of insight. What if the graphite didn't need to be purer? He took the cheap, rejected graphite dust, ground it into an incredibly fine powder, and mixed it with wet kiln clay and water. He kneaded the mixture into a slurry, pressed it into long, thin square strips, and baked them in a fiery furnace. The physics of why this worked was mind-blowing. At 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, the clay vitrified, forming a rigid, microscopic honeycomb structure that trapped the slippery graphite particles inside. By changing the ratio of clay to graphite, Connie realized he could perfectly control the hardness and darkness of the line. More clay made the core hard and light. More graphite made it soft and dark. It is the exact same H and B grading system we use today. He then glued these ceramic cores between two grooved strips of local cedar to keep the user's hands clean. Connie didn't just invent a modern pencil in 1795. He weaponized human expression for the masses. If you've made it this far, you're clearly the kind of person who finds this stuff fascinating. You enjoy looking at the ordinary things sitting on your desk and realizing they have a secret, chaotic, and often violent past. You're exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. Hit subscribe so you don't miss our deep dives. But here's the dark part of the story that history textbooks quietly buried. The pencil did not remain a military secret for long. As the 19th century dawned, it became the silent engine driving the entire industrial revolution. Architects needed them to design sprawling rail networks. Engineers used them to blueprint steamships. Thousands of sweatshop clerks used them to balance corporate ledgers in crowded cities. But as the global demand for pencils exploded, a hidden, toxic cost emerged for the people making them. In the late 1800s, pencil factories were absolute circles of industrial hell. The air inside the cutting and grinding mills was thick, with a permanent gray cloud of floating graphite and fine cedar dust. Workers didn't have masks or ventilation. They breathed this abrasive mixture into their lungs for 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Over time, their lungs literally turned black and lost elasticity, a horrific, fatal condition known as graphite pneumoconiosis. Workers spend their final years coughing up dark, ink-like phlegm, dying young just so society could have a cheap tool for writing. Wait, there's more. The pencil couldn't conquer the world alone. It required a companion to fix its errors. Early erasers were made of rolled-up pieces of moist white bread, which rapidly rotted and smelled putrid. But in the mid-19th century, factories began using vulcanized rubber, treating it with sulfur and volatile chemical solvents to get the texture right. Then came the iconic yellow paint. Have you ever wondered why almost every classic school pencil is bright yellow? It wasn't a random design choice. In the 1890s, the finest, purest graphite in the world was being mined in China. To signal ultimate luxury and unmatched quality, Western manufacturers painted their pencils bright yellow, the exact color traditionally reserved for Chinese royalty. But to get that incredibly vibrant, glossy yellow hue, companies mix heavy doses of lead chromate into the paint. Think about that for a second. For decades, millions of school children were absent-mindedly chewing on the ends of their pencils while daydreaming at their desks, unknowingly ingesting a toxic heavy metal that damages brain development. By the time the 20th century arrived, the pencil had become a massive, global invisible system. During World War I, the United States military realized that modern warfare required millions of accurate records. They forced 16 million drafted men to carry a pencil at all times to map trenches, take orders, and fill out medical tags. It became a required instrument of industrial bureaucracy. Today, the pencil is entirely invisible to us through sheer familiarity. It sits forgotten in dusty junk drawers, gets tucked behind the ears of carpenters, and lies broken at the bottom of school backpacks. We buy them by the dozens for pennies and sharpen them down to useless stubs without giving them a single thought. We treat them as cheap, disposable plastic and wood trash. But the next time you hold one, look closer. Every time you write a simple note, you are holding a masterpiece of material science that survived wars, broke royal monopolies, and fundamentally transformed how the human brain processes information. It is an incredibly democratic tool. It doesn't require electricity. It never needs a software update. And it works flawlessly upside down or in a vacuum. More importantly, it is a tool that explicitly grants you permission to fail. It allows you to make a catastrophic mistake, wipe it away cleanly as if it never happened, and immediately start over. In a modern world obsessed with permanent digital footprints, algorithms, and unerasable data, the pencil remains beautifully, deeply human. It is temporary. It wears down as you use it, sacrificing its own body to record your thoughts. It literally requires physical friction to exist. Take a look around your room right now. History isn't just found in museums or massive stone monuments. It is hiding in your pockets, your drawers, and the tools you use every day. History is everywhere. If you find this video interesting, please don't forget to subscribe and comment your thought.